Hey there, everyone. Welcome to this morning's edition of the NBC Markets Morning Call. I'm Mark Gardner, 16th of October, 2025. Stocks were up overnight. Upbeat bank earnings pushed them higher. We had a number of the Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and then Wells Fargo and JP Morgan were yesterday, but they sort of caught a bit of that bid tone overall. And look, there were other things going on as well. We had Powell basically give the hint that rate cuts were going to continue, but there was also a comment from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as well, just inferring that the Chinese were being disrespectful in a meeting with his sort of equivalent in China. That's obviously a bit concerning because this is, normally everyone's now betting on the Trump taco, and this is kind of just. I thought this would be largely solved, not necessarily solved, but de-escalated by now, and it just seems to be tensions sort of starting to bubble and hopefully they don't boil over. So you can see here, Aussie stocks were up yesterday. I think the banks and everything were up really, and obviously we had pretty good movements in the miners. Everyone's starting to wake up to the fact that commodities have been cheap for about the last 3 years compared to the equity market. And if you're going to have AI, you got to build the data centers to put the chips in. So the Aussie having a pretty decent little run, still from my mind fairly disappointing, to be honest. I think we could be much higher. There's some Rio and BHP pretty big chunks of the index, and we and could easily, if you look at global diversified mining stocks, we seem to be the laggard, which is pretty ironic, considering we're a pretty heavily focused mining exchange. So basically we had Nikkei, Hang Seng in China up yesterday. It was a general buoyant mood. Everything just seems to be melting up, I guess, at the moment. The Dow was largely flat. We weren't up much, but obviously you can see the Russell 2000, they're up 1%. It's the more rate sensitive. And then, Fed Reserve Governor Stephen Moran also, he urged quick rate cuts, and then that followed up on Jerome Powell saying, the bank's likely to continue easing monetary policy. They won't be making, they won't make any major decisions anytime soon because they don't have any economic numbers while this government shutdown heads into its 16th day. So we, on average, we in the last sort of since the 80s, basically, it's been 15 shutdowns. The longest was the last one a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, which is about 34 days, but generally they're 8 days. So we're now double the average length of a government shutdown. But one thing I can say, just watching financial media this morning, the aggressive tactics from the Republicans and the Democrats have backed off considerably in the last week, and I dare say it's damaging both parties' reputations. I dare say there'll be some form of resolution. I would imagine in the coming days, because I can't see it. And I could be wrong. We are in the Trump era, so there's always an asterisk over speculating on politics at the moment. As to Trump era is quite often an exception and breaks the rules. But I would expect there to be coming into the midterms, I would expect there to be a little bit of compromise, because once it starts looking like a resolution, both parties are going to try and claim to be the ones that that broke the drought or broke the shutdown. So it will very, very quickly go from it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault to we solved it. Oh, that was me, that was me, that was me. So and there'll be a fair bit of positivity around that once it turns. So, and that's where I kind of have I do have some concerns over these precious metal prices at the moment. But look, you've also got the China-US tensions bubbling in the background as well. So we've all been lulled into a sense of security that Trump will chicken out or it'll get solved. It's all posturing. but I can kind of understand why these precious metals have continued to run, apart from like the obvious supply shortages and things like copper and silver. But the is that, you know, even if we do solve the government shutdown, that'll probably be near-term bearish for precious metals. However, China's sort of playing games around that rare earths. And I did notice this morning, Bloomberg had a guy on, a head economist from Barclays, and, you know, it was a bit of, you know, it was stating the obvious, but basically, like, China's got a 20-year lead on locking down these critical minerals. They're not going to be able to change it in the near term. So there's going to have to be some compromise from the US. And they can't, like, and the spiraling debt as well. They can't just throw just stupid amounts of money and pay up for buying and antimony mines or lithium mines and the defense part. Like, you know, they're supposed to be being prudent with their cash and getting these, getting this debt down. So that's also a positive for precious metals. So you can kind of see why, you know, Twitter and the like is filled with, you know, gold's at the top, silver's at the top, blah 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 blah. But they've been saying that for over a month, and every night you wake up and it's like, oh, it's up again. Chip stocks headed higher overnight. There wasn't any particular catalyst, but then there's some serious moves in some of them. I think what's really happening is you can see Nvidia's. So Nvidia had the massive head start. You know, they're 95% of the AI chip market, and you're just starting to see these fringe players pick up on the back of the fact that, you know, that, you know, a 95% market share dominance that never lasts forever. And those inference chips that do specific tasks where they don't need those super high grade chips that Nvidia has, you know, they're starting to sell. So you can see here the where the bank stocks are up. JP Morgan's up a little bit, and yeah, and then the others were the others largely followed. So yeah, but some of the defensive sectors here, utilities and staples, were up as well. But there's no real clear pattern in this market map. Let's face it. I mean, it's fairly speckled. So Newmont as well, just absolutely crushing it, and probably would be potentially the best performing S&P 500 stock for the year, because it's, I mean, we've been a little bit back and forth and had Newmont on at various occasions, but I think it's up nearly 200% in the last 12 months, I would imagine, or thereabouts. We bought it 18 months ago, but like in the mid 40s. So and she's well above 100 now. So yeah, today's big show will be TSMC, ASML, so Taiwan Semiconductors. They make, you know, I guarantee anyone who's watching this has a TSMC chip somewhere on their desk, if not probably 20 of them. They make 90% of the world's chips or thereabouts. So they're reporting today. That'll be in the Asian session time. ASML said there was, which are the photolithography, which I'm struggling with that word. It was quite embarrassing yesterday on Oz because I buggered it up about 8 times, which is that's how they print the chips essentially. And 2 nanometers is ASML has the monopoly on. They said there was super high demand from the West in terms of their high grade chips. They did give a forecast that China was would have a significant downgrade. But look, well, you know, I think TSMC is probably a far better indicator. And they were up about 3% overnight leading into these earnings. There's a wonderful stat about TSMC that they produce in one factory per day more units than all of the factories in the world combined. So it's in everything from an electric toothbrush to your headphones, everything. Nearly all, and 99% of all the high grade chips are actually manufactured by TSMC. So the likes of Nvidia, etc., they don't do foundry, what's called foundry. They don't make the chips; they just design them, and then TSMC manufactures them. There is always a risk, though, with Taiwan being blockaded by China, which has happened in the past. However, Trump and Xi have generally come to an agreement that won't happen during Trump's presidency. But as things escalate, China, I believe Taiwan's only energy independent for for about a week or two. So if anyone's been reading the AFR in the last couple of days, talking about how Australia would only have petrol for X amount of days or 28 days or something like that, Taiwan's worse. So China would only have to blockade for a week or two in the Taiwan Strait. And I'm pretty sure the Chinese don't call it the Taiwan Strait. There's still conjecture over the whether it's a Chinese territory, but blockade would be an absolute disaster, not only for TSMC, but the entire all of the AI chips in the world get manufactured there. So when we had a supply chain issues with cars over COVID, everyone assumed it was COVID, but it was actually a fire in the TSMC factory where they made the chips for cars. That actually caused that shortage. So, that's how important it is to the supply chain, and they know it, and that's why there's such a strong US presence militarily in Taiwan. The rally continues. Uranium, again, I was pretty surprised. I mean, that's just been on an absolute heater. I think the URA ETF in the US is up something stupid like 150%. I saw on Twitter. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong, but it's definitely up 100% and more. Gold was new fresh high. Silver, I don't believe it made a new fresh high, but it definitely revisited. I think it fell maybe 5 cents short. But I was just having a look this morning and overnight doing a bit of research. So the silver shortage is real. So you've got London now. They're just not really offering lease rates, so you can't pay to be delivered silver. It means that people can't short silver, which means there'll be less offers. On Chinese website JD.com, 100 gram bars are selling for 250% higher than spot at around about 120, 130 an ounce. And then in India, silver dealers are just defaulting on deliveries all over the place. Basically, they can't source it. And more concerningly for the West, silver ETFs have halted inflows because they can't source supply to physically back the ETF. So ETP MAG is one that we've held here for the last 18 months, which is just a physical warehouse silver ETF for a lack of a mature silver miner in Australia. So I would imagine that those guys, I mean, it's not a huge ETF. The US ones would be much larger, but yeah, that if you can't actually buy the physical silver or source the physical silver, you can't take inflows because you're taking on too much risk. That's ETF market maker 101 is don't get caught out not being able to provide what your underlying is. So they're all pretty concerning. Gold will be fine. There's loads of jurisdictions in the world that are very stable. You can get loads of gold supply from. And platinum had a little bit of a run, but not a massive one. But that was why we did a silver and platinum enhanced growth strategy with structured products about 4.5 months ago, and had a silver and platinum pair, because geopolitically, the countries that produce those metals are largely either having issues with production or are Trump's favourite countries to pick on. So, and currently, I think both of them are up around about 58, 59% as it stands. And within that investment, we were leveraged about 5.5 times. So we're currently sitting around about up 200%, which is very nice. As far as today goes, I don't really see a huge amount happening. It'd be just very much more of the same, I would imagine. And Telix had a fantastic day. Shout out to all the haters out there that absolutely tried to nail me to a cross on social media on that one. Maybe next time you guys might do your research. So yeah, it was up about 17% yesterday and upgraded guidance. So that was a really good surprise move, and I'd expect this healthcare to sort of continue to grind higher. I think with lack of economic numbers, obviously lack of a government shutdown resolution, tensions rising, I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see that run. I think the catalyst for a potential pullback in precious metals might be that resolution of that government shutdown, and probably just monitoring Trump's mood on China overall, and because we probably are due for a pullback. I think in silver and platinum, it's the third fastest 4-month rally in history. And I think it's one of the fastest $500 moves up to the upside for gold in history and all that sort of thing. So, but with commodities, go and look at a nickel chart from 2022. With commodities, can keep coming. But yeah, it'll so not too many new ideas necessarily for you guys, but yeah, there's probably a little bit more of the same. We've started trimming a little bit of the precious metals because I just sort of feel if the rug gets pulled, it will get pulled to the tune of about 10 or 15%, in which case we'll probably look to buy back in, because I don't think the thematics change in the long term. However, you've got to be sensible. When you're in the money, you've got to be sensible in taking some off. You don't want to go, you don't want to go all in on every trade when you can bank some money along the way. So, be mindful of your risk management, people, and and take off small clips along the way. So just in case something happens that you don't see coming, you still made some profit. But have a great day, everyone, and we will speak again tomorrow. General advice warning. The content presented in this presentation is intended for informational purposes only and provides general advice only. It does not take into account your personal objectives, financial situation, or specific needs. This information should not be the sole resource when making investment decisions. We strongly recommend you seek the advice of a financial professional.